This is a comment earlier from Muslim Bitcoiner. And he says, this altcoin pump is definitely a coordinated attack on retailers to ignore Bitcoin. I did not think about this, but I agree with this. But I do want to talk about something else that very much relates to this, what Muslim Bitcoiner said here. And this is a very short clip that we're going to watch. We're going to tie it back to Muslim Bitcoiner's comment here on the distraction of maybe this is a coordinated attack on Bitcoin. And we'll explain why. This is our good friend, Tom Lee. Ready? Here we go.
Do you want to, we always get a Bitcoin comment from you before we let you go. Normally it got stuck under 100. That's a pretty, it's a psychological level, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think some of this could be, there's a lot of folks who don't want Bitcoin over 100,000, and some of it may be the exchanges themselves are concerned because there is a pretty low supply of Bitcoin available over the counter. So you have a
Let's listen to that one more time.
There's a lot of folks who don't want Bitcoin over 100,000, and some of it may be the exchanges themselves are concerned because there is a pretty low supply of Bitcoin available over the counter. So you have a supply shortage, and if Bitcoin makes a move above 100,000, I think there'd be a big chase. So I'm still confident Bitcoin's going to close much higher before year end.
Before year end.
Before year end, yeah.
So break $100,000 before the end of the year?
Yeah, well above 100,000 before year end. It's just a matter of time.
It's December 2nd. It's not that long, Tom. So it's going to do it in the next 4 weeks.
Tom makes bold short-term calls.
I know, you're nuts, and they all come, usually they come true.
Okay, so that's a developing situation for sure in Bitcoin. So Tom Lee, going back to Muslim Bitcoiner's comment here, altcoin pump is definitely a coordinated attack on retailers to ignore Bitcoin. So, I mean, at this point here, you have to understand what's happening, right? There's so much demand for Bitcoin right now, not at a retail level, but like at a big money institutional level. You have MicroStrategy, and this is why I titled it the urgency in Bitcoin right now, because Michael Saylor came out a month ago now and said, over these next 3 years, we're going to spend $42 billion on Bitcoin. We're going to buy $42 billion worth of Bitcoin. And if you noticed, he's been buying it every week. He's not waiting like once a quarter. They're going to do a fourth of that or a 12th of that. He's buying every week. He knows the urgency here. He knows that the supply on the over-the-counter exchanges are drying up, which is being communicated to the exchanges who have a very low balance of Bitcoin. So you have this huge demand of Bitcoin from MicroStrategy, from Marathon, from Dubai, from the Middle East, from the US in a month from now, the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, from pensions, from all these public companies buying Bitcoin. But the problem is, unlike any other asset that has ever existed in history before, there's only so much Bitcoin available, right? And so if these big institutions and these exchanges and the people who are kind of responsible for, buying and selling Bitcoin, the exchanges, the platforms, the over-the-counter exchanges, they know that they either have two ways here to keep the price down, or to not only keep the price down, but also accumulate as much Bitcoin as they can, right? Because they're trying to accumulate right now. They're trying everything that they can to keep everybody's eyes off of Bitcoin because they want to accumulate as much as possible because there's only so much available. So the best way to do that, and this is what Muslim Bitcoiner is saying here, is to make the other altcoins, which have literally zero value, make them run up, get people distracted, get people chasing those. Because when they're doing that, then that takes the eyes off of Bitcoin. And some people might even be stupid enough to be trading their Bitcoin for these altcoins. So that's one way, is they say, you know what? Don't worry about Bitcoin. Don't worry about the one with the very true scarce supply. Don't look at that one. Look at XRP. It's going up. It's doubled in the last week. Everybody's talking about that one. Nobody's talking about Bitcoin right now. And that's what they want. Because if everybody's talking about Bitcoin, the over-the-counters would run out, the exchange would run out, this price would shoot to $5 million in not a large amount of time. And when that happens, when everybody's interested in Bitcoin, when everybody's asking about Bitcoin, that means there's less available for these big institutions who want the Bitcoin. So they're using things like these altcoins, and they've done this every cycle, but this was even before the big boys were here. So every cycle, there's a supply crunch that happens, and it's going to be nothing like we're going to see this time around with the countries, the public companies, the pension funds, everybody buying. So I 100% agree with Muslim Bitcoiner. I didn't think about that before, but I do think that they are trying to keep the price of Bitcoin down because they're running out of Bitcoin. And so the urgency there is just to understand like how scarce these sats are. Truly. There has never been an asset like Bitcoin, not even anything close to Bitcoin. Gold would be the closest. But we know how much gold is out there. We know that there's a 2% inflation rate every year. That's kind of what they control with it anyways. I think China just found like $800 billion worth of gold in a reserve. It might have been more than that. But anyways, the point is that there's never been an asset like Bitcoin with a truly fixed supply. So we are going to see the greatest supply crunch of all time. It's going to happen probably sooner than we think. But in the meantime, they're going to try to keep people's eyes away from Bitcoin for as long as they can. And that's why these alts are pumping, not because they're worth anything, just because they want people's eyes and attention off of Bitcoin. Does that make sense? Makes sense to me.